An early spring afternoon in the logging town of Longview, Washington. 8-year-old Rima Traxler begins her daily walk home, 10 blocks from St. Helens Elementary. Her mother, Danelle, waits for her. This day, however, Rima never makes it home.
Come 3:30, Rima didn't come home from school. She should have been home by between 3:15, 3:30. So I walked up to the school, and she wasn't at the school playing.
The first finger of worry creeps up Danelle Kinney's spine. She walks the neighborhood looking for her daughter, but finds nothing but empty playgrounds. An hour after school let out, Danelle calls 911. As police search, a mother waits. Within a few hours, it becomes clear that Rima is not simply lost. Someone has abducted the second grader. Danelle tells Longview police she had given her daughter a secret password, unicorn, and told the 8-year-old never to go anywhere with an adult who didn't know it.
What we were asking of her is just to be safe. It doesn't matter if they're your friend or if they're mom's friend or dad's friend. If they don't know the code word, don't go with them.
According to Danelle, at least one other person knew about the password, her estranged husband, Rusty Traxler. Police suspect Traxler might have snatched his stepdaughter rather than risk losing her in a custody battle. On 2 separate occasions, Traxler is given a polygraph about Rima's disappearance. Both times he fails. In an official summary of their investigation, Longview detectives write, "As is evident, Rusty Traxler was the primary focus in Rima's disappearance. With no evidence tying Traxler to the disappearance and no other viable suspects, the investigation into Rima Traxler's disappearance falters and quickly goes cold." It is a week before Thanksgiving, and Janet LaPrey waits for her 12-year-old daughter, Kara Rudd, to arrive home from school.
I waited for that last bus stop, and no Kara, no phone call.
Janet calls Kara's cousin and classmate, who tells Janet that a family friend had picked Kara up from school.
My niece told me that Joseph Condro took her, and then my heart just dropped.
Joe Condro had been living in Janet's garage during the summer of 1996. The two had a falling out, and Janet threw Condro out of the house. Officer Chuck Davis is dispatched to investigate. Kara's cousin tells him Condro approached the 2 girls in the school parking lot.
At which time Joe Condro had pulled up in his 1982 Firebird. The 2 girls then conversed with Joe. At that time, Kara Rudd had got in the car with Joe.
After a few minutes, Kara gets out of the car and Condro drives off. Kara tells her cousin she plans to play hooky, that Condro has promised to pick her up at a nearby park and take her out to the woods to spend the day. As Davis listens, his case evolves from a simple runaway to a possible murder. 12 hours after Kara Rudd first disappeared, Officer Chuck Davis brings Joe Condro in for questioning. Condro tells Davis he did see the girls earlier that morning, but he never saw Kara after he drove away from the school. While Condro talks, Davis notices something that tells him Condro might be lying.
I noticed that he had multiple scratches on both of his arms, and I asked him how those had happened, and he told me that those scratches were the result of him being locked out of his residence earlier that morning, and he had to crawl through his window to get back into the house, and thus he'd scratched his arms.
Davis is suspicious. Scratches alone, however, are not enough to hold Condro, and Davis reluctantly releases him. Meanwhile, Detective Sergeants Jim Dusha and Steve Rayom step in on the case.
We knew the time he was seen at Monticello Junior High with her, and we knew when he was seen in Kelso, Washington, applying for a job. So we knew that he only had about a 2-hour time period. So that helped us determine how far he could drive.
A tip from an acquaintance of Condro's narrows the search even further.
We found an old roommate that had lived with Joe Condro that said Joe liked to go up on Mount Solo.
The detectives head for Mount Solo and drive the area.
As we were all standing there, we said, this is a likely area where her body is. Everything fit into place from the description that his roommate gave us.
Shoulder to shoulder, on hands and knees, the team of 50 people search the woods of Mount Solo. The morning passes with no sign of Kara. Then Reserve Lieutenant Mike Parker spots something.
Saw an old Volkswagen car body. When I got down to the car, I couldn't open the trunk lid, but I could look inside the main passenger portion of the car, and that's where I found a big black wad of material. And so as I was lifting it up, out fell Kara's bra.
Inside the car's shell lies the nearly naked body of Kara Rudd, her torso almost totally decomposed. But as the team raises the car, they find Kara's lower half remarkably intact.
Because of the slope, because of the water runoff, the way her body had been placed underneath the vehicle, basically from the waist down, was preserved as if she had been in a refrigerator.
A stroke of luck has preserved at least a portion of Kara Rudd's remains. Detectives send it to forensics and hope an examination will provide the evidence needed to convict Joe Condro of murder. Longview detectives reach out to Portland, Oregon, and a forensic pathologist named Larry Lumen.
Her head was largely skeletonized. Her neck organs had basically been removed by animals, which would preclude a diagnosis of strangulation.
With only Kara's lower half to work with, Lumen focuses on saving any bodily fluids that might be present.
On any case like this, as a matter of routine, we would take oral swabs, rectal swabs, vaginal swabs, looking for seminal material, and ultimately DNA.
The swabs are sent to the DNA lab at San Diego's police department.
I got very excited when I examined the one rectal swab that had been taken at autopsy. And I realized after doing microscopy that even though she had been out 6 weeks, that there was still some sperm present on the swab.
O'Donnell is able to lift a DNA profile from the sperm found inside the victim. He then compares that profile against the DNA signature of Condro and finds an identical match. O'Donnell delivers the news to Cowlitz County authorities and prosecutor Jim Stonier.
When I told them that I, in fact, had found sperm on a rectal swab and that the DNA analysis indicated that it was consistent with Joseph Condro, their suspect, his mouth was just wide open.
It gave scientific evidence of two things. One, that he was the perpetrator, and also the seriousness of what he did.
Jim Stonier files capital murder charges against Joseph Condro. In a bid to avoid the death penalty, the defendant's attorneys approach prosecutors about a possible deal. What they have to trade is the unfinished story of 12-year-old Rima Traxler. On a February morning, Detective Scott McDaniel faces the most difficult assignment of his career. Point by point, he must extract the details of Rima Traxler's murder from her killer, Joe Condro. Condro begins by explaining how he was able to lure Rima Traxler to her death. Rima's stepfather and one-time suspect, Rusty Traxler, was a friend of Condro's. According to Condro, Traxler told him about the secret password, Unicorn, that Rusty and his wife had taught their daughter. Condro then used the password to gain Rima's trust.
Hi, I'm here to pick you up. The password is Unicorn. Get in.
Condro took Rima to nearby Germany Creek to swim. He told Rima her parents would meet them there.
Which was a complete lie. It was just a ploy to get her to take her clothes off so I wouldn't have to take them off later. At that time, I intended to kill her. That's when I hit her in the side of the head in the temple right here, in the temple area. She was like looking at the river, standing up, and I came up and I hit her in the side of the head. She fell down and knocked her out.
After knocking Rima unconscious, Condro choked her, then crushed her head with a rock. According to Condro, he hid Rima Traxler's body behind a log. McDaniel asks Condro the unanswerable, why he chose to rape and kill children.
The example I can give is like an alligator. They eat and then they sink to the bottom of the river and digest their food for weeks, and then they're ready to do it again. That's how I am. I could wait another 10 years and I'd always want to do that again.
Joe Condro escapes the death penalty and is sentenced to a term of 51 years in prison. And while Condro may someday be eligible to get out of prison, his own words ensure that he will never be released into society again.